He thought she was just an assistant, but the night she walked into the ballroom like a goddess, his empire, his heart, and his darkest fears began to unravel. The morning rush of Manhattan pulsed like a heartbeat outside the towering glass walls of Castellano Industries. Inside, Celeste Morgan kept her head down as she hurried across the marble lobby, clutching her leather portfolio to her chest. The gleaming floor reflected her small frame, oversized gray cardigan swallowing her shoulders, dark hair pulled so tightly into a bun that not a strand dared escape, thick glasses perched on her nose. At 26, she had perfected the art of blending into the background, becoming a shadow that served coffee, carried files, and orchestrated a billionaire's life without anyone truly noticing she existed. That was her power, and also her prison. The elevator carried her wordlessly to the 52nd floor, to the executive suite where Roman Castellano ruled like a king. She had worked as his assistant for 3 long years, anticipating his needs before he voiced them, smoothing over disasters before he even knew they existed. And in all that time, the man had barely looked at her. She was useful, efficient, reliable, invisible. Roman stood as he always did when she entered, tall and severe by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office. The skyline spread out behind him, but it was he who commanded attention. At 32, Roman Castellano was the kind of man who made headlines simply by walking into a room. His steel-gray eyes missed nothing in the business world, yet when they glanced at her, they slid past like she was part of the furniture. She placed his morning espresso on the desk and began reading the day's itinerary, her voice quiet, steady. "Cancel the 3 o'clock with Peterson. Move the board meeting to tomorrow," Roman instructed without looking at her. His tone was clipped, dismissive. "Already done, sir," Celeste answered softly, her fingers tightening on the edge of her portfolio. "I anticipated you might want more time to review the Morrison acquisition files." For a fleeting moment, he paused. The faintest flicker of surprise crossed his face. Her efficiency never ceased to amaze him, though he rarely bothered to acknowledge it. "Fine. Anything else?" Celeste hesitated, her stomach knotting. She hadn't wanted to bring it up, but it was her job. "The Children's Hospital charity dinner is tomorrow night. Ms. Winters called to cancel this morning. Would you like me to arrange for another escort?" Roman's jaw flexed as he absorbed the complication. That dinner was crucial for maintaining his company's philanthropic image. Attending alone would ignite gossip, whispers he had no patience for. He turned back toward the window, silent for several long seconds. Then with the cool decisiveness that defined him, he said, "No need. You'll accompany me." Celeste blinked, certain she had misheard. I'm sorry, sir. I don't think I heard correctly." "You heard perfectly." He didn't even turn toward her, his words as casual as if he'd asked her to schedule another meeting. "You know all my business associates, understand the deals we're negotiating, and can hold intelligent conversation. It makes perfect sense." Her throat tightened. She wanted to laugh, to protest, to remind him who she was, the invisible woman who fetched his dry cleaning and organized his calendars. "Sir, I don't have anything appropriate to wear to such an event." Roman finally turned, his gaze brushing over her with the same impersonal detachment as always. "Take the corporate card, buy whatever you need, consider it a work expense. I don't need another shallow socialite who only cares about being photographed. I need someone competent by my side." Competent. The word landed heavily, both a compliment and a reminder of her place. She swallowed hard and nodded, forcing her voice to remain professional. "Yes, Mr. Castellano." He turned back to his desk, already absorbed in the next matter, but Celeste stood frozen for a moment longer, her heart pounding in her chest. She had just been thrust into a world she had never belonged to. A dinner surrounded by New York's elite, lights and cameras and whispers. She imagined herself under their gaze, the plain assistant with the wrong clothes, wrong hair, wrong everything. As she left the office, she could feel the question gnawing at her. Would she embarrass him? What she didn't know, what Roman Castellano himself didn't yet realize, was that his careless decision had just set in motion the unraveling of everything he thought he knew about control, power, and desire. For the first time in years, the invisible assistant was about to be seen. The next afternoon, Celeste stood rooted to the sidewalk in front of Bergdorf Goodman, the icy autumn wind whipping through her cardigan. The sleek glass doors gleamed like a barrier between worlds, the one she belonged to and the one she'd been ordered to enter. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She had never stepped into a place like this. Inside, dresses cost more than her monthly rent, shoes sparkled like they belonged in fairy tales, and women who seemed born of privilege glided across marble floors as though they owned the earth. The corporate credit card weighed heavily in her purse, almost mocking her. Roman had said it so simply, so coldly. Buy whatever you need. As though transforming herself for New York's most glamorous event were as easy as running an errand, Celeste drew a steadying breath and pushed the door open. A rush of warmth, perfume, and polished elegance enveloped her. She tried not to shrink as a sales associate approached, her designer heels clicking against marble. Miranda, elegant, poised, flawless. She took one look at Celeste's outdated glasses and shapeless cardigan, and surprise flickered in her expression before she smoothed it into professional courtesy. "May I help you?" Miranda's tone was polite, though tinged with doubt. "I need something appropriate for the Children's Hospital charity gala tomorrow night," Celeste whispered, feeling her cheeks burn. For a moment, Miranda just stared. The charity gala was infamous in New York, exclusive, dazzling, crawling with photographers and billionaires. Slowly, Miranda's demeanor shifted, curiosity sparking in her eyes. "Of course," she said smoothly. "Let's find you something perfect." The hours that followed blurred into a whirlwind of fabric, mirrors, and murmured opinions. Celeste was ushered from rack to rack, slipped into silk gowns, velvet sheaths, chiffon creations that clung to her body in ways that left her stunned. Each time she emerged, Miranda circled her like an artist judging a canvas, discarding one dress, selecting another. Celeste felt like a child playing dress-up in someone else's world, until Miranda drew back a curtain and revealed a midnight blue gown. It was unlike anything Celeste had ever touched. The fabric shimmered like starlight, soft and liquid under her fingers. When she stepped into it, the gown molded to her body with delicate precision, hugging curves she had spent years hiding, flowing to the floor in a river of silk. She turned to the mirror, breath catching in her throat. The woman staring back was not invisible. Emerald eyes glittered behind the lenses of her glasses, framed by long lashes she never noticed before. The color made her pale skin glow. Her dark hair, still twisted into its severe bun, looked suddenly regal instead of plain. For the first time in her adult life, Celeste saw herself as something other than a shadow. She was breathtaking. "Now for the finishing touches," Miranda said, satisfaction in her voice. She guided Celeste to the accessories department, draping diamond earrings against her skin, slipping delicate heels onto her feet, showing her how a single strand of pearls could elevate the look into timeless elegance. By the time Celeste left the store, the gown carefully wrapped in layers of tissue and satin, she felt dizzy, as though she were balancing on the edge of two lives. She returned to her modest apartment where the gown seemed out of place, hanging against her closet door, a jewel in a room of muted colors. That night, she could hardly sleep. Roman's face haunted her thoughts. Not the cold CEO who barely looked at her, but the image of him seeing her walk into that ballroom. Would he laugh? Would he even recognize her? The fear was a physical ache in her chest. She told herself it didn't matter, that this was just work, an assignment like all the others, but her trembling hands betrayed the truth. The next morning, Celeste did something she hadn't done in 3 years. She called in sick. The lie tasted strange on her tongue, but it freed her to step into another world. In the salon Miranda had recommended, a team of stylists descended on her like sculptors working on marble. Her bun unraveled, and her hair spilled down her back before being coaxed into soft, glossy waves. Contact lenses replaced her thick glasses, revealing eyes so green the stylists gasped. Makeup painted confidence across her skin, subtle, sophisticated, radiant. When it was over, Celeste barely recognized the woman in the mirror. The shy, hidden assistant had vanished. In her place stood someone luminous, powerful, impossible to ignore. Her heart thundered with a new kind of fear, not of being invisible, but of being seen. By the time evening arrived, Roman was waiting in the lobby of the Plaza Hotel, his custom suit immaculate, his expression as cold and impatient as ever. Several associates had already greeted him, eyeing the empty space at his side. He checked his watch. His assistant was late, unlike her. "Excuse me," a voice said softly. Roman turned, and the air froze in his lungs. Standing before him was a woman who looked like she had stepped out of a dream. Midnight blue silk clung to her figure, her emerald eyes sparkled with fire, her lips curved in a shy but devastating smile. For a moment, he thought she must be a stranger, some socialite he'd overlooked. Then she spoke again. "It's me, Mr. Castellano, Celeste." Roman's world tilted on its axis. The chandeliers of the Plaza Hotel ballroom glittered like constellations as Roman Castellano escorted Celeste inside. The low hum of voices, the flash of cameras, the clink of champagne flutes. This was his battlefield, a place where deals were brokered in whispers and fortunes shifted with a handshake. Normally, he navigated these waters with perfect control, but tonight, with Celeste on his arm, every familiar detail felt different, charged, alive, dangerous. From the moment they crossed the threshold, all eyes turned. Roman felt the shift ripple through the crowd like a current. Powerful men paused mid-conversation. Elegant women lowered their silk fans, whispering behind jeweled fingers. The orchestra swelled, but the true music was the chorus of speculation surrounding them. Who is she? Is this Roman's new love? Where did she come from? Roman, who had built an empire on never losing his composure, felt something rare, unease. For 3 years, Celeste had been a shadow in the periphery of his life, silent and invisible. Now, transformed into a vision in midnight silk, she drew every gaze in the room. His chest tightened with an emotion he couldn't quite name, possessiveness perhaps, or the dawning realization that he was no longer in control. "Mr. Castellano, wonderful to see you," boomed Senator Harrison, approaching with his wife in tow. His eyes flickered to Celeste, curiosity sharpening into open admiration. "And who is this lovely lady?" Roman didn't hesitate, though his pulse spiked. His hand settled at the small of Celeste's back, a gesture both protective and intimate. "This is Celeste Morgan," he said smoothly, "my companion for the evening." Celeste's smile was luminous but controlled, the kind of smile that disarmed even the most skeptical politician's wife. She turned effortlessly to the senator's spouse, asking about the hospital's pediatric wing. Her voice was calm, melodic, brimming with knowledge. Within moments, the senator's wife was laughing, nodding, completely charmed. Roman watched, astonished. This wasn't the timid girl who shuffled through his office, head down and shoulders hunched. This was a woman who belonged here, who commanded attention not by demanding it, but by embodying grace and intel. Again, so naturally it seemed inevitable. For the first time in his life, Roman found himself not leading the conversation, but standing in quiet awe of the woman beside him. Yet admiration wasn't the only thing tightening his chest. As they moved deeper into the room, Roman noticed the way other men looked at her, the lingering stares, the glances of appreciation that bordered on hunger. It made his jaw clench, made his hand press more firmly against the curve of her back. She was his. The thought startled him because she wasn't. She had never been. Until tonight, she had only been his assistant, his shadow. But now, he wasn't so sure. The orchestra shifted to a waltz, the opening notes rippling through the air. Roman rarely danced at these functions. It was a waste of time, a distraction from the real business. But tonight, something compelled him. He turned to Celeste, his voice lower than usual. "Would you care to dance?" Her emerald eyes widened, uncertainty flickering across her face, but then she nodded. "I'd love to." The crowd parted for them as they stepped onto the floor. Roman's hand slid into hers, strong and steady, while his other hand rested against her waist. The moment their bodies aligned, a jolt of electricity passed between them. They began to move, and though Roman had mastered countless boardrooms and hostile negotiations, he had never felt such vulnerability as he did holding her now. "You're full of surprises tonight," he murmured, his lips brushing dangerously close to her ear. Celeste tilted her face toward him, her smile tinged with something both playful and defiant. "I'm the same person I've always been, Mr. Castellano. Perhaps you're just seeing me for the first time." Her words struck him harder than any blow from a rival ever could. His eyes searched hers, and for a moment he glimpsed what he had missed all these years. Intelligent. Say, wit, kindness, fire. How had he been so blind? Around them, flashes from photographers sparked like lightning. Roman realized with a sinking certainty that this night would not remain private. Tomorrow's society pages would be filled with images of them, dancing, laughing, looking for all the world like a couple in love. And he couldn't bring himself to care. In fact, the thought of denying it suddenly felt impossible. But as the waltz carried them across the floor, a darker thought slithered into Roman's mind. This, her beauty, her presence, the attention she commanded, would not go unnoticed by others. His rivals, his enemies, men like Vincent Morrow. They would see her not just as a stunning woman, but as a weapon. And in that instant, Roman knew the truth. Celeste Morgan was no longer just his assistant. She had become his greatest vulnerability. The charity gala stretched on into the late evening, the ballroom a glittering battlefield of whispers, deals, and alliances. Roman Castellano moved through it with his usual authority, but tonight there was a shift in the air. He wasn't the center of attention anymore. She was. Celeste, transformed, radiant, magnetic. Every circle he entered, he found men leaning subtly toward her, women sizing her up with veiled envy, reporters angling for a chance to learn her name. Roman told himself he didn't care, but he did. He cared too much. It wasn't long before a voice Roman knew too well slithered through the crowd. "Roman, my old friend." Roman stiffened before turning. There, stepping out from the shadows with a glass of champagne in hand, was Vincent Morrow. Tall, impeccably dressed, eyes the color of glacial ice, his former college roommate, his fiercest rival in business, and the only man Roman truly distrusted. Vincent's smile was wide, polished, but it never reached those eyes. "I heard whispers," Vincent continued smoothly, his gaze sliding past Roman to Celeste. "And I had to see for myself. Word is you made quite an impression tonight." Roman's jaw tightened. "Vincent," he said flatly, "I didn't realize vultures were invited." Vincent chuckled, unbothered, and turned his full attention to Celeste. The intensity of his gaze made her stomach tighten. "And who is this vision?" he asked. "Surely you don't mean to tell me she's the same assistant I saw in your office a year ago?" "What was her name?" "Celeste Morgan, wasn't it?" Celeste's cheeks flushed, but she straightened her shoulders. "Yes," she said with quiet dignity. "Celeste Morgan. Remarkable." Vincent's smile deepened, dripping with something more dangerous than charm. "You've certainly been hiding her, Roman. One might almost think you were keeping her all to yourself." Roman's hand pressed against the small of Celeste's back, a silent claim, but Vincent had already seen enough. His predator's instinct flared. This woman wasn't just beautiful. She was leverage. Later that week, Roman was buried in acquisition files when Celeste excused herself for a quick break at a coffee shop down the block. She thought nothing of it, but when she slid into her favorite corner seat with a book, a shadow fell across her table. "Miss Morgan, what a pleasant surprise." Her head jerked up. Vincent Morrow was lowering himself into the chair opposite her, his tailored suit flawless, his smile disarmingly warm. "Mr. Morrow," Celeste said stiffly, "this is unexpected." "Please, Vincent." He leaned forward, elbows on the table as though confiding a secret. "I wanted to apologize if I unsettled you the other night. Galas can be overwhelming, especially when one is thrust into the spotlight." Celeste offered a polite nod, but unease coiled in her chest. "I handled it just fine." "Of course you did," Vincent said smoothly. "You were extraordinary, which is why I feel compelled to warn you." Her brows drew together. "Ether, warn me?" Vincent's smile softened, but his eyes glittered with calculated cruelty. "Roman has a pattern. He finds women, becomes fascinated, showers them with attention. But when the novelty fades, he moves on. You seem too intelligent, too remarkable to become another casualty of his fleeting interest." Celeste bristled. "You don't know him as I do." Vincent tilted his head. "Don't I? I've known Roman for over a decade. I've watched him burn through partnerships, friendships, women. He'll never let you into his real world, Celeste. Haven't you noticed? Has he introduced you to his family, to his closest friends? Or are you still a secret tucked away in that office, hidden like a guilty pleasure?" The words hit their mark. Celeste tried to keep her expression calm, but the truth stung. Roman hadn't introduced her to anyone, not his mother, not his business allies. At the gala, he had called her his companion, but the next morning he was back to introducing her as assistant. "I think you're mistaken," she said quietly, gathering her things. Vincent leaned back, sipping his coffee, watching her with a knowing smile. "Perhaps, or perhaps you already see it. He'll never give you what you deserve, but I would." His voice dropped, silk and poison all at once. Recognition, respect, a place at the table. Celeste's heart pounded as she stood, refusing to answer. She walked quickly out of the cafe, but Vincent's voice followed her like smoke. "Think about it, Miss Morgan. You deserve to shine." That night, lying awake in her tiny apartment, Celeste couldn't banish the doubts. Roman's face appeared in her mind, the way he'd held her on the dance floor, the way he'd whispered against her ear. But Vincent's questions echoed louder. "Has he introduced you to his family, his world, or are you still just his secret?" And in that silence, a crack opened in the trust she'd begun to build. Friday evening settled over Manhattan like a storm waiting to break. The cast. Elano Industries' executive suite, normally a place of sleek efficiency, carried a weight heavier than the city skyline pressing against its windows. Celeste sat at her desk, her cardigan draped over her shoulders like armor, though she no longer felt like the woman who used to hide behind it. Her fingers moved automatically across the keyboard, yet her mind spun in restless circles. Vincent's poisonous words had burrowed deep, replaying again and again. "Has he introduced you to his family, or are you just his secret?" She wanted to dismiss them as lies, manipulations, but the truth was undeniable. Roman still kept her carefully separated from his personal life. At the gala, yes, he'd danced with her, held her close, but since then, In meetings, she was back to being my assistant. When his mother called earlier that week, Celeste overheard him decline a family dinner without mentioning her once. And now, the Davidson wedding, a social event of the year. Roman had spoken of it only in terms of logistics, asking her to clear his schedule. He hadn't even considered taking her. That silence cut deeper than anything Vincent could have said. By the time Roman emerged from his office, gathering his things for the evening, Celeste's decision was already carved into her bones. Her voice, when it came, was steady, but it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. "Mr. Castellano," she said, reverting to his formal title. He paused, his eyes narrowing at the distance in her tone. "Celeste? I need to speak with you." He waited. Celeste removed her glasses slowly, setting them on the desk as though shedding a mask. For a moment, the goddess from the gala seemed to flicker through the drab fluorescent light. Then she drew a folded envelope from her drawer and placed it between them. "I'm resigning. Effective immediately." The words struck like a blow. Roman's hand froze on his briefcase. He stared at her as though she had spoken in a foreign language. "You're what?" "I've accepted a position with Morrow Industries," Celeste said, her voice firmer than she felt. "Vincent offered me an executive role with recognition and twice my salary. I deserve that, Roman. Recognition. Respect." "Vincent," Roman spat, his voice suddenly dangerous. "That bastard put you up to this." He stepped closer, steel gray eyes flashing. "Celeste, you don't understand what you're doing. He doesn't care about you. This is just another way to get to me." "Maybe so," she whispered, "but at least he isn't ashamed to be seen with me in public." That pierced deeper than any blade. Roman's shoulders stiffened, his jaw locking. He wanted to deny it, but he couldn't, not when he knew it was true. He had hidden her, compartmentalized her, convinced himself it was protection, but to her, it was rejection. "There's nothing to explain," she continued, her voice trembling now. "I was good enough to manage your empire, good enough to share your secrets, good enough to share your bed, but not your life. I can't live like that anymore." Roman's facade cracked. For the first time since she'd known him, the mask of cold control fell away, leaving raw vulnerability. His voice dropped to a near whisper. "You're right. You do deserve better. Better than me. But I'm too selfish to let you go." Her breath caught. "What?" He ran a hand through his dark hair, pacing like a man cornered by his own ghosts. "Do you want to know why I hide our relationship? Why I keep it in the shadows?" His voice roughened. "It's not shame. It's fear." Celeste's brow furrowed. "Fear?" "My parents had the perfect marriage," Roman said, his words sobbing, pilling out in a torrent. 25 years of love, devotion, happiness. My father worshipped my mother and she adored him. They were everything to each other. And then, she died. A car accident, just like that, gone. And I watched my father disintegrate. Celeste. He never recovered. He withered. He drank. He wasted away until he died 5 years later. Everyone said it was from a broken heart. Roman's voice cracked, his steel eyes suddenly glassy. "I built my life around control so I'd never end up like him. I told myself if I kept love at arm's length, if I never let anyone become my everything, then I could never lose what he lost. But I was lying to myself, because you..." He swallowed hard, stepping closer, his voice raw. "You already are my everything, and the thought of admitting that terrifies me more than anything I've ever faced." Celeste's own eyes blurred. For years she had dreamed of him seeing her, truly seeing her. And now here he was, stripped of armor, begging her to understand. "Roman, I love you," he said fiercely, desperately. "I love you, Celeste Morgan, and if I have to prove it to the world, I will." He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and dialed. "Mother, it's Roman. About dinner tomorrow night, there's someone very special I want you to meet. Her name is Celeste, and she's the woman I'm going to marry if she'll have me." Celeste gasped, her hand flying to her lips. Roman's eyes locked on hers as he spoke, the words both a vow and a challenge. But before the hope could fully take root, a slow clap echoed from the doorway. Vincent Morrow stepped into the office, his smile sharp as a blade. "Touching," he drawled. "Truly, but I'm afraid Miss Morgan already signed a contract with me. Legally binding, I assure you." The room thickened with danger. Roman's face hardened. Celeste's pulse roared in her ears. The battle lines were drawn. Love, betray, Yal, empire itself hanging in the balance. And the real war was only just beginning.